Learn to shade with this overlapping values drawing exercise. This is such a great way to practice applying dark, medium, and light values and learn how to shade with abstract shapes. I'm using a series of repetitive triangles, but you can do this with freeform shapes, circles, whatever you would like. And the materials are so basic, you just need a pencil, an eraser, a blending stick, and if you don't have one of those, all you need is a tissue or some toilet paper, and then something to trace so that you have your shapes. If you love learning about art, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an art tutorial. Starting out, you need your pencil and a blank piece of paper or a page in your sketchbook. If you've never made a value scale before, I'm going to put the link above because that is a must before you try this shading exercise. If you don't have the blending sticks, you can fold your tissue or toilet paper into a pencil-like shape, and we'll be using those later. I'm using the corner of an index card because it's thicker than paper, and I'm using it as a template to create my triangle that I'm going to trace at least 5 times. I tried this before tracing a roll of masking tape for circles, but I have found that a triangle is just a more fun shape, in my opinion, for shading. You could totally do this freeform, so you can make up different shapes as you go, and you could even cut out a couple different shapes. I'm trying to keep things really simple because you have to count how many times you overlap. So I don't want to make things complicated, I'm just using one triangle. So with whatever you're tracing, you want to flip it around and overlap several times. Now, don't go crazy because every time you overlap, you're going to be shading a different value. So be thoughtful in how you're overlapping. You want to overlap your triangles so that you have at least 1, 2, and 3 areas of overlap. If you do too many tracings, it's going to be very confusing to figure out which value to shade where. So I have 3 triangles for now, and I can see that I've overlapped in certain places, not at all, then twice, and then 3. So that means that the triangle has overlapped itself 3 times. I'm going to draw 2 more triangles, and I think 5 is a good number to go for. If you trace this 27 times, it'd be really stressful, and 3 is just kind of boring. When I was practicing this technique, I made the mistake of tracing a whole bunch without keeping up with it, and it was confusing. So if you see me kind of going slow and hesitating, I'm making sure that I have overlap 3 times in certain areas because that will be my darkest value, but not to the point where I can't tell which triangle belongs to which. So I have 5 triangles, lots of overlap, and now I'm going to reference my value scale. And again, click that link in the beginning of the video, and I'll put it in the description box if you've never done a value scale before. So the next step is you are going to number each space with how many times you have overlapped. The easiest thing, in my opinion, is to start with number 1. So if your triangle overlapped nothing, it's 1 triangle by itself, right in number 1. So it's all by itself. 1 is the loneliest number. 2 means that you have overlapped twice. So like a Venn diagram, 2 triangles are interacting. Finally, 3 is going to be when 3 shapes or triangles have overlapped in some way. And it kind of hurts my brain a little bit to find those areas, but they're going to be more in the center. So once you have your 1s and your 2s, go back and find your 3s. If you've overlapped more than that, you would write the number 4, but for this exercise, I'm simply overlapping at the most 3 times. That's going to make it easier to find my numbers and to shade. Now that I have it numbered, each number represents a set of values. So 3 is the darkest, so that's dark gray, 2 will be medium gray, and 1 is lightest gray. I'm gonna start with 3, darkest gray, because I only have 2 sections. I already have in my head that I'll probably go back and add another triangle so I can have some darker areas, but for now, I'm going to shade as dark as I can in those 3 overlapping sections. Whew, what a sentence. So your darkest gray, you're going to press down and overlap as much as you can without ripping your paper or breaking your pencil. So this needs to be as dark as you can get that pencil to go. So don't be a scaredy cat shader, really get in there and make it super, super dark. It's not going to be black because it's a graphite pencil, but it's as dark as you can possibly get it. Here's my blending stick, and I'm using it just to smooth out my values. This comes in handy really with the lightest value especially. So you can see it picks up graphite and then it carries it or holds it so you can use it for shading. Now that I have my darkest grays out of the way, I'm going to move on to my medium grays. So it's somewhere between those two values. So I'm pressing down much lighter. I am going to overlap less, and I'm going to go ahead and erase that number 2 just in case it shows up later. I really like this space because it's in between the two darkest values, so I can really check to make sure that it's a medium gray. I am overlapping, I do want it smooth, and you can see that it is lighter than the two grays I've done before. Using my blending stick, I'm going to smooth out that value, and you can see how dark it made it. So I'm using my eraser to pull away some of that graphite and go back in. If you're looking for a challenge, try doing this without a blending stick. Then you have to rely on your own hand to create those values and to make it smooth. But I just love using the blending stick because it just makes everything nice and smooth with my textures. So this section I'm going to use the blending stick again, and you can see it's holding value. Look how similar that is. That's kind of more of a dark gray, and I want it more in the medium zone. So I'm using my eraser to pull any unwanted pencil markings and going back in to smooth with my blending stick. One thing to keep in mind when using the blending stick is to go back and make your edges nice and sharp. So a triangle is a geometric shape, which means it's made of straight lines and edges. So sometimes the blending stick can confuse the edges of your drawing, and so don't over blend or make it really smudgy. Stay inside the lines to give it that nice, crisp, almost puzzle-like quality. So moving on, I'm going to attempt to do my lightest value, and that's going to be somewhere between 4 and 5 on my value scale. So I've overlapped not at all with this. So this is the triangle by itself. So for me personally, I have a hard time because I'm very heavy-handed getting really light values. And I'll be honest, I'm using a really cheap number 2 pencil. This is not a drawing pencil. It is a pencil that parents at my school bought for the school supply list. It is not intended specifically for drawing. Okay, do you see how I darkened that and it looked exactly like the second value? That's the trouble with the blending stick, is sometimes it makes all the values look the same. So if you're going to use something like this, you do have to make sure that each value has its own lightness or darkness. Using my eraser, I'm getting my edges in there, and I still think this is a little too dark. So if you struggle like me, you can get really nice drawing pencils, and I'll put my favorite ones in the description box. If you use an ebony pencil, it's really smooth, and you might not need to use a blending stick at all. So I'm not really happy with this yet. It's still very similar to the second value that I've done, that medium gray, and it's supposed to be lightest gray. But I have a lot of other sections to do, so I'm going to move on to another medium gray section, and I'm going to fill it in with my pencil. When you're shading in your artwork, it's not like you're going to get it right or perfect the first time. Everything is relative, so that means everything compares to each other. So if I go too dark in one space, I might darken the darkest area to give it that darkest value, if that makes any sense. So sometimes you'll see me erasing values, sometimes you'll see me going back and darkening them. That's just all part of the shading process. I'm going to try number 1 again, and for number 1, it's our lightest gray, so erasing the 1 is important. I'm trying to keep my shading smooth, and I'm trying to add as little pencil as possible, so if and when I use my blending stick or my tissue, it's not going to make it darker than I want it to go. So you can see it's already too dark. This is always my problem. So for me, my eraser has always been my friend when creating those light values. It just helps me control how light it is. that's pretty good light gray, but I think my medium gray could be a little bit darker. So I'm going to go back with my pencil and darken it up, making sure that it's not as dark as that first triangle. So this is a really neat section because all three values are next to each other, and I can really compare and make sure that I have a true range of dark, medium, and light gray. So now everything is just a repeat of what I've done before. So I'm going to speed things up just a little bit. So I'm going to leave this medium gray without the blending stick or the tissue so you can see the difference in texture. So it's less smudgy, and I really like how it looks without blending it. It has a really nice gray to it, and I feel like the edges aren't as smudgy. I don't have to go back and rework it. So I'm going to leave that one the way it is. Because this area is a super large space, I'm going to use the tissue this time to smooth and blend that lightest gray, which it does a really good job. The difference is it doesn't have a fine point and it doesn't hold on to value as much as the blending stick. So although it kind of creates a little bit of a blurred edge that you have to go back and fix, it doesn't make the value darker like it does with the blending stick. So as you do this exercise, you might find that you prefer to not blend at all and just use your pencil. You might prefer the tissue, or you might be obsessed with the blending stick. So this is a great way to kind of find your voice as an artist. What is your style? What materials do you prefer to work with? I'm flipping my paper because I'm sure you've had the experience of drawing and then all of a sudden your palm is smudging your paper. So I want to flip my paper. I'm right-handed, so I want everything to the left of what I'm drawing, so I'm not smudging it with my palm as I'm drawing. Because this is time consuming and I am repeating the same steps over and over again like a puzzle, I'm going to speed things up yet again. So I'm only finding 3 values. I'm using my eraser, my blending stick, my tissue, and my pencil, and I'm working it out like a puzzle, finding those areas of dark gray, medium gray, and light gray. So although I have filled every section with the correct shading, I just feel like it's a little incomplete. So even though I said overlap with 5 different shapes at the beginning, I'm gonna add 1 more. I feel like I want some more shaded areas, and the bottom of the triangles just doesn't seem finished. So I'm using the same template I used before, and I'm going to add 1 more section. You could fill your whole page and it would look like a stained glass window, and you could overlap more than 3 times. I'm just trying to keep things pretty basic with just 3 areas of overlapping with 3 values. But it is your artwork. You could overlap as many times as you feel comfortable with. I'm going to speed things up again, just because this is a large area to fill and you've seen me do it before. A good final step is to use your eraser to clean those edges. It is a geometric shape, so you want straight lines and edges, and so before you call it finished, go back and find areas that you can improve. Do you need to lighten or darken areas? Do you need to go back and make the edges of each triangle complete? And I really love this empty triangle that I left pure white. So if I were to do this again, I would overlap in a way where I had more areas of white. That's a really satisfying shape to put in there. I'm feeling finished. I'm feeling like I have practiced shading. This is such a great way if it's been a while and you haven't shaded or you're brand new. This is such a great exercise to get familiar with shading and value. So thank you so much for sticking around and making art with me. And if you're interested in more drawing tutorials, check these out.